What's going on? It's Frankie Gomez with eXp Realty, and in this video, we're going to break down the real cost of living in Spring Hill, Florida. Specifically, how it compares to the national average, and then also some of the biggest relocation states for Florida, like New York, New Jersey, California, Georgia, and Texas. Make sure to stick around to the end because I'm also going to be talking about the potential abolishment of Florida property tax and give an update on that. As always, if you have any questions, you can reach out using the contact information in the description below. And you can also get my Hernando County moving guide, which is a free guide that gives you everything you need to know before moving to Spring Hill, Weeki Wachee, or Brooksville, Florida.
All right, so full disclosure, I'm going to be looking at notes because there's a lot of stats and numbers involved in this, and I didn't memorize it all, just to be honest. So, with that being said, I did get all the data from PayScale, MIT Living Wage Calculator, Numio, and then state comparison data, mylifeelsewhere.com. So, I actually used AI, which is kind of crazy it could do this, but I took all the stats from all four of these and kind of made a website to break it all down. And I thought it came out pretty good. But overall, Spring Hill compared to the national average, it's 8% more affordable to live in Spring Hill. So that's just a general overview of the affordability of Spring Hill. And then when it comes to housing, they have the median home price here at 359, and that's just Spring Hill. If we go to Hernando County on the Sun stats here, the median sale price for September 2025 was 340. So a little bit different, but this is also just considering Spring Hill, which might be a little bit more expensive and eliminate some of the outliers in Brooksville or Weeki Wachee or, mobile homes manufactured and stuff like that. So this has it at roughly 360 for the median home price. And that also might be considering list price, not sale price. This is 339 here is a sale price. I'm also going to be checking the screen a lot to make sure that I'm not, blocking anything that you guys can see. But let's jump right in. Housing, 31% lower. Groceries, 6% higher actually. So it actually gives you the cost of a loaf of bread, gallon of milk, a dozen eggs. Transportation is 3% higher as well, and that's probably because we don't have public transportation, so it's factoring in cars as well. But gas, 332 a gallon, and then a new mid-sized car is roughly 23,000. Utilities 1% higher. Obviously, I think that's probably because of the Florida heat, but it's still pretty average, $209 per month, and that's basic utilities $135 a month, and then internet $57 per month. I can tell you that this is probably a little low depending on who you go with. If you have fiber, I pay like $80 a month for a gig. Some of you might not know that terminology, but yeah, it's probably anywhere from 60 to 90. And then healthcare 7% lower, and dining out is average. Now, another thing to look at is the living wage requirements. And if you live in Spring Hill or Hernando County, let me know in the comments what you think. But for a single adult to support, a household, they need $22 per hour in Spring Hill. A single parent, $35 per hour. And then two adults, if they're both working with two children, $23 per hour. All right, so the biggest takeaway here is going to be housing. It's 31% lower compared to the national average. I will say that this median rent price is probably a little low too, just in practice. Like you're probably looking at 1,300 to 1,800 for like a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, or a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. And also depends on if it's a townhouse or a single family or a duplex. So that's probably why this number is a little bit lower. But I would say, 1,400 is probably the better side of it. And this is saying city center, but that's probably why we don't really have a city in Spring Hill. So this 1,400 number is probably more accurate. Housing's the biggest thing. And even though insurance and property taxes have gone up over the last few years in Florida in general, we're still seeing that those people moving from those states I mentioned at the beginning of the video. And we're still seeing people coming here because of this reason right here, 31% lower for housing. Even though it's gone up over the past few years, we're still lower because the whole nation has gone up. Real estate prices have kind of shot through the roof. So So yeah, that's the takeaway for the national average for Spring Hill. Now we'll jump into New York. Overall, Spring Hill is 13% cheaper than New York, with the major advantages being no state income tax, lower property cost, and then better purchasing power. If you speak to, I speak to a lot of people that move from New York and just up north in general, and they say that they have so much more purchasing power when it comes to finding a home in Spring Hill compared to areas of New York or New Jersey. Um, and yeah, another thing I wanted to look at is that this number is 13%, and that might be factoring in Florida in general, because if you go to the actual source, My Life Elsewhere, let me just make sure we're on the right so you can see everything. Um, this says New York is 61% more expensive than Spring Hill. And that's factoring in things like restaurants, groceries, housing, transportation, childcare. So here's all the numbers for that. I will see if maybe we can go to the cost of living index. I don't know if this one has a one you can compare with another city. Let's just do New York. I mean, that seems a little unfair to compare New York, but just to give you an idea, this is the differences. Spring Hill being in the green because it's 55% cheaper here, and etc. If you want to check out these stats yourself, you can go to Numbeo, like I mentioned, livingwage.mit.edu, payscale.com. These are all public sources to find this information. But overall, New York 13% cheaper. And like I said, just speaking to people that have moved here with me from New York or New Jersey, they see the difference right away with the amount of home they can get. And obviously, that's not even factoring in like the fact that we have great weather year round. It's a little hot in the summer, but we have great weather, and that's mostly why people move to Florida. The next one is New Jersey here. Spring Hill is 18% cheaper when comparing it to New Jersey. So if we just go back to the cost of living comparison here, we'll type in New Jersey. New Jersey is 73% more expensive than Spring Hill. I did not think that. I thought that New York would be more expensive than New Jersey, but I guess not. So here's your figures there. But the same thing with New York. The big advantage is no state income tax, and New Jersey has higher rates, better value on property, and then also lower housing and rent. So across the board, Spring Hill we obviously picked some of the bigger, differences with New Jersey, New York, California, Georgia, but these are actually the states that people move from the most to Spring Hill or to Florida. So that's why we picked them, and this is probably the reason, right? If you're paying 18% more compared to everything in Spring Hill, you're probably going to want to move eventually. And this might be a little controversial, but not to get political, but with the new mayor that just got elected, I think we might even see more people trying to move to places like Florida, Tennessee, Texas. So we'll see how that all pans out, but we'll move on to California.
Real quick, I just wanted to mention that if you're considering a move to Florida, you can reach me directly using the contact information in the description below. Also, if you enjoyed this content, click the subscribe button. It really helps support the channel, and it'll inform you when new videos are posted.
Spring Hill is 19% cheaper than California, and same thing. Housing cost dramatically lower. There's no state income tax. That's going to be one that's across the board. And then for this one, it actually highlighted groceries being 12% cheaper. If we go to our little handy website, type in California, this has it at 74% more expensive. I do want to mention that these numbers are probably a little bit inflated because data can only be assessed so quickly. So like the information that these websites have probably is a little bit delayed. This might be from a couple years ago or even a year ago. It does say that they updated it in November of 2025, but I just want to kind of be upfront about that. Like this number is probably a little inflated because Florida in general has become more expensive over the past few years with everybody moving here, with the hurricanes, insurance, taxes have gone up. But needless to say, California, New York, New Jersey are still more expensive. It might not just be as drastic that of the numbers that you see here, and it could be still. But I just kind of wanted to be straight, forward about that. Not mislead anybody. So yeah, I mean, we'll move on to Georgia now. We'll just go. Georgia's 34.4% more expensive than Spring Hill, which I find a little surprising. I want to say, let's go to housing, 14.8% more in Georgia. Let's just go to Zillow real quick and see how that actually compares. Maybe do some stat checking here. All right, so I had to cut that video because it was running super slow because of all the apps I have open for the screen share and everything. But I figured that Savannah would be a pretty good comparable because it's closer to the coast. I mean, just off rip, 350 for a 3.3, 2,100 square feet. 3.2, 1,275 square feet, 358, 365 for this 4.3. So yeah, I mean, that gives us a general idea. Anywhere from 350 and up for a standard 3-bedroom. Here's a 285, but that looks like an older home. It might need some work. I don't know. It's decent. 425 for 1,200 square feet. Savannah. If we go to Spring Hill now, 3.2s, 250 for a 3.2, 1,300 square feet, 375 for 2,500 square feet. And obviously, I'm looking at this at a very high level. I'm not, going into the details and running comps, but this one is a 5.3, 3,000 square feet, 359 for a 4.3, 2,600 square feet, 289 for a 50. So overall, I think Spring Hill seems to be a little bit lower for a 3-bedroom. And then if we go back to this, it says that housing is 14.8% more in Georgia. So it probably does check out. I obviously can't really check all of this to be super accurate, but we can only make decisions based on the information that we have. I can tell you that overall, compared to those other states, definitely going to be higher. I think Georgia and Texas, which we'll talk about now, are probably a little bit closer, specifically Texas. I mean, this even says that it's 35.9% more expensive. And I think that's because we have it Spring Hill versus all of Texas. You'd probably have to really look at like a similar city or town in Texas that's comparable to Spring Hill to, amenities wise and quality of life wise. So if we just, it's going to be a little bit, it's definitely going to be closer. If we compare Florida to Texas, they're probably almost identical, 1.2% cheaper than Florida. So 11.8% less in Texas. And I knew that was going to be a stat because if you just go online or like on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, you'll see these huge houses for sale in Texas because there's so much land for like 400,000 and they're like completely brand new, updated. And I think that's just because they're, far away from a lot of amenities. But anyways, this gives us a better idea. Texas is 1.2% cheaper than Florida, but I think, it was like 35% cheaper when you compare Spring Hill to Texas. So if we do Florida versus Georgia, we'll go back a little bit here. You actually have Georgia's 1.7% cheaper than Florida. But again, back to Spring Hill. Spring Hill is 34.4% cheaper than Georgia overall. So that's what we're comparing in this video, Spring Hill versus these other states. There obviously is going to be other towns or cities in these states that compare better to Spring Hill, but overall, it's just showing you that Spring Hill is affordable and comparable to maybe some of the better cost of living places in Georgia, Texas, New York, New Jersey, California. So that's like the big takeaway in this video is Spring Hill in general is cheaper than the majority of the places you're going to live in these other states. All right, and as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, this is the property tax update. So in October of this year, so a month ago, this bill was filed on the Florida Senate.gov website. It's pretty much says a joint resolution proposing an amendment to Section 6 of Article 7, which pretty much says exempt homestead property, so property that you homestead that you live in, from all ad valorem taxation other than school district, and then prohibit counties and municipalities from reducing total funding for law enforcement and provide an effective date. So the effective date is 2027, as you can see here, 1/1/27. And it's pretty much saying that potential elimination of property taxes, and you can't adjust the funding or reduce the funding to law enforcement to make up for the property tax reduction. If I had to guess, I would say that this would probably go to a vote next year if they were doing the effective date of 2027. And it probably has to jump through a few hoops to get on the ballot in 2026 to begin with. And on top of that, if it did happen, it would probably end up being like something they roll out over a few years, kind of like how they increased the minimum wage over the last 5, 6 years, um, versus just like a strict first year full exemption of property taxes, no more property taxes for homesteaded properties. So yeah, obviously, if this did happen, it would have huge implications on people relocating from those states I mentioned, and it would make that affordability factor go even further, a bigger, difference and a positive difference for Spring Hill or Hernando County in general. So something to keep an eye on. I'll probably provide updates, and yeah, that's where we stand right now. It's pretty much like waiting and seeing if it gets onto the ballot next year. At least that's my understanding of it.
That wraps up this video. Again, if you have any questions or you're considering a move to Florida, you can reach out using the contact information in the description below. You can also get a copy of my Hernando County moving guide. It's a free guide that gives you everything you need to know before moving to Spring Hill, Weeki Wachee, or Brooksville. And again, like and subscribe. It really helps support the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video.